And thanks to everybody joining us a little early today. And thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so that you can see whenever we go live and you can see when our videos are on our channel as well. And we have quite a few people coming in. So it's 10 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and get started. Or at least it's 10 o'clock for me. It's not 10 o'clock for these guys, but thanks for joining everybody. Today we have Jim Byrne from Autodesk joining us, the product marketing manager from Autodesk. He's going to be discussing what's new in Autodesk Inventor 2025 with Tom Fitzgerald. Most of you know Tom Fitzgerald, so Tom's here today as well. Thank you both for joining us. And thank you especially to Jim. I know you have a busy schedule, so let's go ahead and get into it. So on the next slide here, we have a few of our upcoming sessions. Next week's session is going to be hosted by Austin Purvis. This is going to be his second session in his series discussing CPQ solutions. And after that, we're going to have Volker Coco, who's also from Autodesk, talking about what's new in AutoCAD. So if you were here last week, we did with Irvin Hayes from Autodesk, we did Autodesk What's New in Vault. So we have a lot of new fun What's New sessions coming up, and you can scan with your phone here to get more information with the QR code. And lastly, I would like to share the 2024 State of Design and Make. This is something that Autodesk has created. It's a report. It's a global annual study for leaders who design and make places, objects, and experiences. This survey is really helpful. It was built from interviewing over 5,000 people, industry leaders from countries around the globe. It's a good opportunity to see their results and learn the latest trends, what's going on in your industry in the report here. So be sure to check it out. I'll drop the link in the chat here as well. This is a free asset, so be sure to check it out. And for those watching on YouTube, I'll also drop it in the chat as well.
That QR code should work too. I think it's going to your site.
The QR code works on your phone, so both are great. I just opened up the chat, so if you have question, comments, you can leave those in the chat. And we also have the Q&A panel at the bottom as well throughout the session. So I will let Jim and Tom take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Christina. Again, welcome everyone. This is Inventor 2025. What's new? As a lot of you know, this is a really exciting time for Inventor. And Tom and I have a lot to show. There's a packed agenda. And hopefully, of course, you see some great new tools that are going to help you in the way that you work. And so you have both of us. We're going to talk about all of these things that are new. I'm just going to start by walking through a quick agenda. There is a lot to cover. These are some of the heavy hitters that you see over on the left, but we have more to cover beyond what you see here. Sheet metal has seen some really big enhancements to modernize the interface for better efficiency. And you're going to see enhancements to part modeling for the finish feature and patterning. And then the assembly modeling, it continues to see updates with additions of the bounding cylinder, as well as automated color schemes that you can see on this slide. We'll talk more about that. And then you're going to see where we put a lot of effort into drawings for annotations, dimensions, bill of material, revision tables, as well as a continued commitment that we have to standards compliance. And then for several years, many of you have noticed that we have focused a lot of attention toward interoperability, specifically toward Revit and Inventor. And this year is no exception to that. And so after another thing worth mentioning is after Tom is done speaking about interoperability, he's also going to show you real briefly or introduce informed design for Inventor. Hey, Tom.
All right, Jim, thank you. So first thing we want to talk about are some general enhancements to Inventor before we get into some of the other environments. So right off the top of the bat, Inventor, those at Autodesk that are working on Inventor, always striving to include some, graphics enhancements, some graphical enhancements, being able to, hover over different items within the context of your part files or your assembly files and be able to quickly identify, visually those things that you want to interact with. So there's been some enhancements to section highlighting, meaning you're able to, highlight some of those hidden components within the context of an assembly, something that might be internal to your assembly, being able to hover over that and kind of see things highlight in the background, a kind of a subdued highlight. So that way you have a better understanding of what might be hidden behind some of those additional components. There's also some display enhancements in terms of customizing or selecting different colors that you want. So working once again within the context of an assembly, you now have an opportunity to change the different colors that you might use to represent those individual components that you may be hovering over. There's also some graphical improvements around those highlighting things. So specifically curved or round surfaces display a little bit better in Inventor 2025, as well as some control over your the finite display of different lines inside of Inventor. Obviously, not all of us have the same computers. We have different specifications and performance specs within our computers. So having that control to, once again, enhance the performance and the experience that you have with Inventor 2025, is absolutely important. So the last thing here is being able to create a customized color list with working within your display. So if you go into application options inside of Inventor, you now have some control over defining some custom colors for your display. So make sure you check that out in Inventor 2025. Next slide, please, Jim. Some other improvements, specifically working within the interface, is some opportunities to promote dimensions. And I thought this was an interesting functionality introduced in 2025, being able to select dimensions that you create within a sketch environment and promote them up to your part or assembly to represent something more in terms of a model-based definition, or some of those dimensions you want to see tied to the 3D model itself. So an opportunity to promote dimensions. Another feature enhancement has to deal with decals. I'm not sure how many of you out there are working with decals. But now we have the opportunity to place numerous decals onto a single face or surface. Previously, you're only allowed to have one. Now you can apply numerous decals to that face, and then you can define which one is on top, which one's on bottom. So you can bring things forward and backwards to get the appropriate display that you're looking for within your decals. Now, that functionality kind of bleeds over into working with shared views as well. So once you can work with those decals within your normal environment, you now have the opportunity to represent those decals, numerous decals, within your shared views also. So some good features here so far. Now, this is one of my favorites. Obviously, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big proponent of iLogic. So the more functionality that we get within iLogic to assist you in terms of your automation routines and how you want to automate some of your processes within your workflows, obviously having some of these additional iLogic functionalities is going to assist you and help you out. So a major update in terms of working in iLogic is some more vault functionality, specifically being able to identify like an event where you can run an iLogic rule prior to vault check-in. So before you check in, you can create this event basically. So that way you can run a routine before you check a file into the vault. So one of the common use cases here is obviously property validity, checking to make sure that properties are filled out and they have an appropriate value prior to checking into vault, because of course that dependency that we have with vault and property specifically. Some other enhancements are around working with model states. So there's a lot more flexibility in terms of being able to work with model states using iLogic. So being able to generate and create as many of those model states as you want, and more effectively working within those model states by using iLogic. There's also some enhancements when working with external rules inside of iLogic specifically. So I think last year or the year before, we were able to start taking external rules and applying a button to the ribbon so that way you could trigger those iLogic rules. Well, now you have some flexibility in terms of what kind of icon that you want to use on those buttons. If it's your light scheme or your dark scheme, you also have some opportunities to use large versus small icons as well. One of the things in terms of working within your iLogic rules is making sure that not only do we construct them appropriately, but we're not creating them in a way that is going to inhibit or create some sort of security conflict. A few years ago, Autodesk introduced the ability to be able to scan iLogic rules to make sure that they're not harmful or present any type of security risk. So there's additional functionality around scanning those rules to make sure that you're not creating a complicated situation, if you know what I mean. And then there's some additional technology enhancements around iLogic more specifically. So make sure if you're a big fan of iLogic or you're using iLogic, check those changes out in Inventor 2025. They might be able to help you out in terms of your automation routines. Next slide. All right. So this slide right here is just to demonstrate, how focused Autodesk is in terms of improving performance with an Inventor. So over the last 8 years, you can see there's been significant attention paid to not only addressing the needs of users and the feedback that we get from you guys, but also making sure that we can prioritize that to give you guys the best experience when working with Inventor 2025. All right, now this is a really cool one. So how many of you out there have ever been working inside of Inventor and for some strange reason, you're doing some sort of activity and Inventor crashes and then you get that CER dialog box that comes up. And obviously Autodesk is looking for some feedback so that way they can address that so they can understand what kind of frustrations that you may be encountering. So up until this point, we never really had a way to really express to Autodesk why something might have failed or the activities, more importantly, the activities we were doing when we experienced this failure or this crash. So inside of Inventor 2025 now, there's a means to be able to turn on a feedback recorder. And what this allows you to do is basically record the steps you were taking when you experience that crash, catalog that information, and then you can send it to Autodesk so that they can review and they can watch from your screen the different steps you were taking to understand how this could have been a problem, or was this something that you were doing as a user that might have created this issue? And then, of course, how can Autodesk approach that to ensure that that doesn't happen again in future releases or updates? So really cool feature. Check this one out too, particularly if you're doing complex stuff and you have to deal with these CERs often, make sure you utilize this utility and this tool to grab the attention of Autodesk a little bit more thoroughly. All right. So those of you that might be using sheet metal, Autodesk has made some significant improvements in the look and the feel and the functionality of working inside of sheet metal. Now, more specifically, when working within flanges, including or creating faces inside of sheet metal, and of course, working with cut features as well. And you'll notice that all of these really have to work with either working with an existing geometry. So if you have an existing face or edges or any additional sketches you might use. So being able to combine and modernize the UI from having, very distinctive, remember working within, the face tool or the flange tool, you have numerous tabs that you have to go to access information. And if you're really not that familiar with Inventor, sometimes you might miss where those features reside within these UIs. So having a more streamlined, modernized UI where all the information relative to that feature that you're creating is exposed and displayed to you makes it a little bit easier to understand what kind of settings you want to utilize and making sure that you're not missing any of those valuable inputs when you're creating these features. So take a look at sheet metal. following this slide, we have a little video that's kind of demonstrate what that looks like within the context of Inventor.
More intuitive and efficient than ever before. This latest release boasts a sleek, user-friendly UI that streamlines the design workflows by placing tools in a logical order, making previously hard-to-find features readily accessible. The standout feature is the enhanced capability for direct manipulation and visualization of flanges, a pivotal element in sheet metal design. This allows designers to make on-the-fly adjustments unprecedented ease, viewing changes in real time, and applying commonly used presets to streamline your design process. This level of interactivity and control is a substantial leap forward, providing a more dynamic and responsive interface. A series of technical advancements we've added further edge out Inventor's new sheet metal capabilities over previous versions. An advanced profile detection method brings about a new level of accuracy and efficiency in recognizing and working with diverse profiles, mitigating the need for time-consuming manual corrections. We also improved the experience for creating multiple flange end sets within a single feature, eliminating the need to repetitively exit and re-enter the dialog box. The integration of face and flange features into the property panel offers a more organized and accessible platform for managing these critical components. These upgrades collectively enhance the software's usability and reduces your design time and increase overall productivity for professionals working with sheet metal components.
As a user Inventor myself, I commonly use the sheet metal environment, and these improvements personally are very substantial. So once again, check out 2025 and look into sheet metal if you're currently using some sheet metal features. Jim?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tom. So next we're going to look at part assembly and drawing enhancements. So we're starting with boundary options for sketch patterning. I think I'm getting some feedback. Sorry about that. For example, if your pattern crosses a selected sketch boundary, then you can specify to omit those instances. And you're going to find that there's three new options available for that, where it only accepts the instances that are within the boundary. Or you can keep those instances if the centroid of that object is inside the boundary, or if the base point is inside the boundary. And then also, if you're adding geometry text to your sketches, you now have the ability to refer to standard and custom iProperty information for the text value. And then once again, for those same settings that you saw for sketch patterning also work inside of the feature pattern, where the instances that are inside of your selected boundary will be kept, or the centroids or base point that are within that boundary. And then most of you know that there was a new part feature last year called the finish feature. There's several enhancements to the finish feature in 2025. You'll find include and exclude selectors, which hopefully make it easier to select your objects. Switch between solid body, surface body, or faces for selection. And if you're using make part, then your finish features are going to show in the derived part. You'll also find an option to disable or delete a desired finished parameter, and an option to show extended names inside of your browser. For example, you might want it to display things like your material coating or heat treatment, surface texture, or paint. And now there's quicker access to the XML folder, that location where you'll find finished definitions. And so you'll find other enhancements too, including mirror support that's over in the help guide. And so there's a lot of enhancements to the finish feature, again, that came out last year. And hopefully this helps some of you that have used it over the past 12 months. Also, many of you know about orientated minimum bounding box for a derived part. This is something that reduces the amount of detail that you have in your components and assemblies. It reduces it tremendously and hopefully helps to decrease memory consumption. So basically, it's an envelope that is going to replace your complex geometry. So for some of you, you might say it also replaces the proprietary information that you have in your design that you don't want others to see. And there's now a new button for bounding cylinder. And you can mix bounding boxes and bounding cylinders now, especially in cases where you've got multiple bodies in your parts or you're working in an assembly environment. We'll talk about that too. And then the whole feature for a lot of you on this call is the most used feature that you have in Inventor. A lot of you don't go a day without using it. So hopefully everyone has enjoyed seeing all of the enhancements that have been made to it over the past several years, starting with a complete overhaul of the interface, a modernization of the interface. So this year, they've included 3 new drill types to the whole feature. That's flat W, angle V, angle Y. This is part of a continued effort to remain up to date with international standards. And we know that a lot of you have common notes that you apply to your models. You can now use presets and general notes for text and symbols and parameters, as well as standard eye property and physical property information. And so again, this is for annotations in 3D models, but then later you're going to see similar functionality for 2D drawings. So we can take a look at these part modeling enhancements in action. There's a lot to unpack inside of this demonstration, starting with the updates to the finish feature. And once again, the finish feature received significant enhancements in this release, a lot of them. Adjustments to features can now be made directly in Express mode. This provides a faster, more efficient workflow for you. And then you'll also find that selection filters and toggles for managing finish parameters, and the addition of the eyedropper tool for a faster application. It gives you more of a pick and apply workflow. And then we also have new include and exclude buttons, along with body and face filters to aid in selection of your design. And you'll find the ability to disable parameter controls to prevent unwanted parameter generation. And I also mentioned that the finish feature is supported when deriving parts, where the finish feature is going to come along for the ride, and it remains associative if you make any changes to the base part. And there you can see that you have quick access to the XML library as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we enhanced the hole creation capabilities by incorporating the ISO standard, which includes new drill point options like flat W and angle V and angle Y. And so this allows you to design holes that are in compliance with that standard. And we've also provided the ability to modify and create custom holes. For example, holes that are tailored to specific machinery or tooling requirements. And then you'll see here that the hole notes have been updated to reflect those new hole types. And then the pattern creation process includes, again, boundary patterns that enables you to generate patterns that are confined within those specified boundaries. Then any instances of the pattern extending beyond those boundaries are automatically suppressed. And as I mentioned earlier, this has also been extended to the sketch environment, same settings. Okay, so how about some assembly modeling enhancements? So we know that it's common that the bolt connections that you have are placed on patterns. And so you might be utilizing feature patterns in the past that are in the part model, but now you can select the box, you can check the box to follow an assembly feature pattern when adding those bolt connections. And then earlier we spoke about the bounding cylinder for derived parts. We're now here in the assembly mode. And if you're using the simplify command, then you can select bounding boxes for the cylinders or boxes or cylinders for your components. And then once again, this is great for creating highly simplified envelopes for your complex parts in your assembly documents. It's really going to reduce the amount of memory that's needed to work in those very large assemblies. And so a lot of you add color to your parts and assemblies, which is great. And you've got different standards that you're using for those colors. And we all know that the color can make it easier to find the parts that you have in your assemblies or understand your assemblies, especially if you're talking to key stakeholders. Well, now in 2025, you can very quickly change the color of everything temporarily. You can color your models based on individual components or unique parts. You can make them the same color. Same thing for subassemblies, top-level subassemblies, or unique top-level subassemblies. You can make the same color. And as Tom was mentioning earlier, there's the option to customize the colors that are used. You'll find this in the color scheme editor and application options. And then for those of you that are creating presentations of your assemblies, if you have a new version of your assembly, it's a new file, then it's now easier to replace that model reference. You can change the part file while you're opening up the assembly. You can do the same thing with model states when you're in the file option or file open options. So we can take a look at those live. And here we're starting with the setting to follow patterns for your bolted connections. Again, before Inventor 2025, this is something that could be accomplished with feature patterns in the part environment. But now you're going to see that there's the option to follow assembly patterns as well. And by the way, I love using bolted connection. If you're not using it as part of design accelerators, it's something that I highly recommend. It even creates the hole features in your parts if you don't have them in there already. And then next we have orientated minimum bounding cylinder, where you can let Inventor find your components, orient the cylinder envelope, and then apply the minimum length and diameter. So this is something that can be done for the entire assembly, which you'll see here as one envelope, or top level parts, or all of the parts that you have in the assembly. And then we have visualization, where you can change the colors of your parts and assemblies. This is something that shouldn't be a task for you. Now you can do it in pretty much one click. Change the colors of your parts and top level subassemblies. You can base those colors on individual components or unique components. And then again, there's the option to go to the color scheme editor if you want to specify the colors that you want to use. All right, so now on to some drawing enhancements. There's a lot to talk about in terms of annotations. Earlier, we spoke about presets for annotations in 3D models. You can do the same for adding text in your drawings. And then next, you can add background color fill to your drawing dimensions. This might improve the readability of your dimensions if your dimension is across a background color, or perhaps your dimension is on top of a view on a shaded component. It's going to make it easier to see. And this is also supported for exporting to DWG. It will show up in there as well. And if you're creating parts lists, then you can add parts list properties from selected parts to your text dialog. And then some of you are using the Revision Cloud arc that was new last year. You can now edit the size of the cloud arcs around if you have smaller details in your view. And there's also an option to edit the revision cloud as you create them for quick changes. And then diameter and radius dimensions now have the option to hide the extension lines. If you right-click on the dimension, then you'll see it in the context menu. And if you're creating tables in your drawings, then you'll find a new option to merge the cells. So in drawing styles, Inventor includes, it continues to see updates to ISO standards. The standards for arc symbols and surface texture have been addressed in this release. You'll also find a new option for revision tables, where you can set the default to alpha or numeric. And there's a new option in the styles editor for the bill of materials sort order too, where you can change the sort settings for primary, secondary, and tertiary columns. And there's a new checkbox for auto sort on update. And then crop views have also been added to styles, where you can set the preferences for break lines and symbols. So taking a look at some of these, we can start with the ability to insert item number to drawing leader text. And so this enables dynamic updates to text that are linked to parts lists, as well as to balloons and notes within those drawings. And essentially, it ensures that your documentation is going to remain consistent and accurate throughout your design process. And once again, when you're creating your dimensions, Inventor supports background fill color for dimensions in 2D drawings. Once again, it's going to ensure that your dimensions are legible if they're up against a background color or a shaded view that you can see in this case. And then the parts list settings have a new button for sort. There's new sorting options, including auto sort on update. And then we've updated the revision table style, which includes a new option. Now you can set the default to alpha or numeric. And then finally, you're able to hide and show extension lines for diameter and radial dimensions. Just simply right-click on those dimensions and you'll see the option there. Okay, so that wraps up parts, assemblies, and drawings.
All right, I guess I'll take it from here, Jim. So the next thing we want to talk about is interoperability. And as you may know, over the last few years, Autodesk has, made it a point of understanding that, a lot of industries outside of manufacturing may be able to use some of the information that we would develop inside of Inventor. Take construction or the architectural industry as an example, right? Being able to develop your mechanical or your manufactured information and being able to share it with architects and those that work in construction is very valuable. And also vice versa, being able to consume information from Revit specifically and being able to import that into Inventor to be able to manipulate it and work with that design. So we're going to talk a little bit about that interoperability. So the first thing is about importing and exporting. So importing to Inventor and then exporting out of Inventor. So there's been some enhancements in terms of some of that functionality about IFC imports. So industry foundation class types of files, those things that would be exported from Revit, we can now import those into Inventor with some additional functionality in terms of, do we want to reference that Revit model or do we want to import it? If we reference it, if we go and make changes to that source Revit file, those would be reflected within the Inventor file. So if we want to convert it, then that's a one-time shot. We're converting from Revit to Inventor, and now that's a static file that we would then work with or consume. Also, some additional support around multi-body files as well as assembly models, having some better fidelity around those things. We have the opportunity now to select which of those items we want to import, as well as defining our classes of that information that we want to import. And all of this is available and exposed through the AEC property panel inside of Revit, as well as inside of Inventor in terms of how we want to go about importing information into Inventor. Now, a couple of years ago, also had the opportunity to start exporting information from Inventor into an RFA file format. So those individuals that are using Revit can immediately import and consume that Inventor information. So enhancements and being able to work within both of those applications to consume and utilize some of that information. Next slide, please, Jim. So because of this attention being paid by Autodesk around this functionality, they had to include some additional steps there to ensure that you as a user have the opportunity to define, if you're going to export Revit information, if you're going to export out of Inventor for Revit, what version of Revit do you want to export to? Now, if you don't have Revit installed on your machine when you go through this process, you will now get a prompt to install that version of Revit that you want to utilize for that conversion process. It can be accessed through the Simplify command up on our Inventor ribbon. So if you go to Simplify, you now have additional tools there to define what version of Revit you want to output to, as well as being able to work within the bin content environment a little bit easier. And like I indicated, you get that prompt now to install that very specific version of Revit that you want to use. So continued enhancements around that interoperability between Inventor and Revit. Next slide, please, Jim. I believe there's a short little video here kind of walking through those particular steps.
Facilitates smoother and more efficient workflows. Conveniently export KETIV or update on earlier versions of Revit as far back as 2023. This backward compatibility feature ensures smooth interoperability between different software versions and collaborative efforts within the design team. We also launched a specific version of install directly from the dialog within Inventor. This release of Inventor allows users to seamlessly import IFC files from Revit using any CAD technology. This feature ensures all the associated metadata is brought into Inventor without data loss. This offers a much more between architectural and engineering domains, which for many of you is incredibly impactful. Additionally, new import options have been introduced, allowing users to choose between two options: lightweight visualization or an extensive view of individual components and properties for detailed analysis. The new interactive UI has been implemented with an in-canvas preview that enables users to exclude selections based on metadata, name, or geometry. Let's keep breaking down industry silos and use the right tools no matter the given challenge.
Great. And I apologize, everyone, if that audio comes across a little bit quiet there, but just to kind of recap, right? being able to create different or manipulate different settings for importing information from Revit and then outputting information from Inventor to Revit. So make sure you check those things out, particularly if you're working in conjunction with some of those architects or construction firms that utilize that information that you develop. So continuing on with some of the interoperability, I know Jim mentioned this at the top of the webinar about informed design for Inventor. So I believe last year there was an introduction to informed design, but this is the big release, being able to create information inside of Inventor, utilizing all the normal core functionality of Inventor, as well as even some automation routines. So including iLogic to your models, you now have an opportunity to share much more easily with your architects and construction individuals that might consume that information. So you have an opportunity now to create Inventor information and then basically publish it to the cloud, and then make it available to those individuals, those companies, those design firms that need to consume that information. Now, this process then allows us to ensure that we have consistency in quality in terms of how we want to share that information between the designers and engineers that are using Inventor, and of course, the architects that may be consuming that information. As we all know, I mean, if you think about a building or if you think about what might be constructed with architects, a lot of what they use, if you think about the machinery, the plumbing, some of the electrical stuff, none of that really has to do with what you might want to design within the context of Revit, but using Inventor to develop that information and then being able to publish it so that way other individuals can easily access that information with the confidence that it's going to work and it's going to be of quality. Informed design for Inventor and Revit allows us to do that. So we can create information, publish it. We can then even customize. And this is what I was talking about before in terms of being able to introduce or implement automation routines within your Inventor products. So that way you can create some flexibility or variability for those individuals that are using Revit to be able to change the size or the complexity or the definition of that information that they need to consume. And then it also allows us to automatically create any output documentation. So a lot of cool features with informed design. So if you're the type of user that may be collaborating with architectural firms or architects or the construction industry, you might want to check out informed design for Inventor and Revit. This may streamline the process of being able to share and collaborate some of that information. So make sure you check that out. Now, I believe there's a video for informed design here. Let's see if the audio works well enough. If not, please feel free to ask any questions about it.
Now more than ever, you need the tools to design and make as efficiently as possible. But the disconnected nature of today's construction processes makes it difficult to move seamlessly from design to build, and you can't reuse project data to operate more efficiently. Architects must create designs with no visibility into the manufacturing options or constraints of each building component. Subcontractors deal with complex coordination processes and delayed feedback before they can deliver their components. This lack of efficient data sharing between design and make leads to rework, adding time and cost to their projects. These challenges inspired Autodesk's Informed Design solution. With Informed Design for Inventor, manufacturers can use CAD tools like Inventor to add product specs, rules, and constraints to their product models. Architects can discover these models using Informed Design for Revit, customize them, and place them in their building designs. That means product engineers can define and share their product's customizability and limitations. Architects can design using known manufacturable building components, ensuring results will be manufacturable. And construction managers can automatically produce manufacturing documentation, reducing errors and increasing the productivity. The Informed Design solution connects architects and manufacturers from day one to help both teams productivity, reduce rework, and achieve their clients' goals more efficiently. Autodesk Informed Design. Design and make with certainty.
Great. So once again, a lot of attention played to interoperability. If you're working within those industries or collaborating with those industries, make sure you check out Inventor 2025. Jim?
Okay, great. So we are nearing the end of the webinar. And so I just want to take a moment to bring up a few more slides before we get into Q&A. Rather than a lot of times we list all of our resources and we have all these URLs and you're trying to memorize them, take a picture of them. I'm not sure how you're doing it, but we finally created a blog article that has all of our resources in it. So if you're looking to get involved in the Inventor community, or you're looking to connect on our social channels, whatever it is, use that QR code that you see on this slide, because it's going to bring you to that blog article and list all of those things out. If you see something, you don't know what it is, there's a short description of each of those items in there. So we're going to try to keep this up to date. So make it evergreen. If we have anything we want to add or change, then we can just go in there and edit the blog. And then for those of you on the call that are interested in using some of the tools that Tom and I have been talking about, then there are flexible ways that you can access Inventor. Now, so a lot of you know that you can use it month to month, or you can subscribe for a year, even multi-year. That's been around for a while. But now there's even 24-hour access using Flex. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, you'd like to subscribe now, there's a lot of ways to do that. And then it's also worth mentioning the collection. A lot of you that are using Inventor access Inventor as part of the collection. But I just want to bring this up because if you, for example, want to go beyond just the design phase using Inventor, you're looking to do more with manufacturing or production, or simulate using advanced simulation tools to find out if your design is going to work, or if you want to increase performance with it. All of those tools are part of the product design and manufacturing collection. And it looks like a lot of products here. It actually kind of makes it look expensive, but keep in mind that even if you're using AutoCAD and Inventor, it's already more expensive than subscribing to the entire collection. So something to keep in mind. And it looks like we are nearing the top of the hour, but Tom and I are going to remain on for questions. So feel free to stick around if you have any. If you don't have any questions, I just want to take a minute to close us out, our first closing. Just thank you again for joining us. And just want to remind you too that, again, use that link that you saw earlier if you want to continue to connect with us or connect with the Inventor community. Keep an eye out for point releases that are coming out in the summer and the fall. There's a lot of new enhancements that you're going to see there too. So again, I hope that everyone found something that they can use right now that's going to improve the way that you work. Again, stick around if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day. Hey, Tom, do you see anything in there that you want to bring up?
Not really. There was a couple of questions earlier in terms of the properties when working within text blocks inside of or text fields inside of Inventor, being able to coordinate that information to properties and lower level files. There was a question about, is it just the description property, or can we access numerous properties? And, I'd indicated that any of the exposed properties that we typically see, working within parts lists and bill of materials and tables, those same properties are going to be exposed, and we can work with those property values inside of those text fields as well. But other than that, I don't see any additional questions coming in. So if you have any, now is your opportunity, everyone. Otherwise, we're going to let Jim go, and you may not have this chance once again for a whole nother year. All right. Typically, Jim, we get individuals that are prompt in terms of the questions, and considering there's no more coming in, I think we are good to go for today.
Okay.
Once again, everyone, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. You guys know how to get a hold of us either online or give us a call. Also, if you have any additional questions for Jim, please reach out to me. I can always get those to him and any other individuals at Autodesk. And then, of course, use the QR codes, go on the Autodesk blogs if you need to ask any questions and get some response through that avenue as well. Any last things from you, Jim?
No, I'm all set. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Now, thanks everyone for joining today's KVA, and we'll see you on the next one.
Okay. Bye, everyone.